All right, we are recording and we're hoping that folks will jump on. We have a few folks that have registered and we'll be looking for them pretty soon, but want to welcome everyone to a Lunch and Learn with Center for Responsible Lending. I'm Merrill Holloway, the Executive Director of NC 100 and also a Partnership Manager for MDC. This will be completely interactive, so if folks end up hopping on, actually I'm up the door so folks can just come on in. So folks that are jumping into the meeting right now, we are recording, we are broadcasting. We're expecting other people from Rockingham County and partnering other, bordering counties to jump on and join us today for a really great conversation with the Center for Responsible Lending. I'm going to share my screen. We will be completely interactive, so you guys that are watching this live can ask questions. In the chat for folks who are in Zoom, if you want to share your name and your role and your organization that you're representing, we'd appreciate it. I'm going to go over a couple just ground rules, just kind of what we do when we are convening. So hopefully the technology works. Anybody who is watching this on the broadcast, the rebroadcast that we'll be showing pretty soon, you can still put questions in the comment and we will get those questions answered. I'll try to be looking at folks who are watching live and get them to DeMarcus after I do the introduction. But for folks who are watching this on the rebroadcast, you can still put your questions in, we'll get them to them. So again, welcome guys. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. Hopefully this works. Let's see. All right, I hope people can see. Can people see my screen? Yep. Awesome. So really quickly, we are here to talk a little bit about some of the work that the Center for Responsible Lending is doing. But during this conversation, just have a few ground rules for folks that are here inside the Zoom is that we want to listen to show that we hear one speaker at a time. It's completely okay to disagree if we get into a topic or you ask a question that could be provocative. We like to attack problems and not people. We will ask for confidentiality. If you are going to share themes and stories from this conversation, please make sure you ask the other individual if it's okay to share, or if you just want to share generalities about a conversation and identify people, that's the confidentiality. We do want to make space and take space, so definitely be aware of how much presence and room that you take in the conversation today. And we have the permission to be messy today. So if you have an unformed thought or you have a question or reaction to what is being presented today, it's okay if you don't have it exactly right. We just want people to go ahead and feel comfortable sharing. Today, we're going to have, like I said, the Center for Responsible Lending. We have DeMarcus Andrews, who I will shut up in a little bit and let him take over. He is the Director of Outreach and NC Policy Manager with CRL. So he focuses on predatory debt practices and student loan debt. Prior to CRL, he served as a policy advocate for Toxic Free, a nonprofit organization that seeks to advance environmental health and justice in North Carolina. And as you can see, while there, he built and ran coalitions like the one he's going to be talking about today and engaged members of the General Assembly. Throughout his professional career, DeMarcus has cultivated his skills in organizing social media campaigns and relationship building. He is a proud graduate at Gardner-Webb, and he also has a master's from Duke. As you folks who know me, it's not often that I get a chance to converse and hang out with a Dookie. But I'll make an exception today and hope that you guys appreciate the presentation. And of course, DeMarcus enjoys spending time with his beautiful daughters and fishing and jogging for exercise. So that is what I'm going to share about DeMarcus, and then let him have the floor. Thanks so much. And DeMarcus, enjoy.
Yeah, thanks for that, Merrill. And I appreciate the intro. And if the only thing you remember is that I enjoy time spending with my girls, I'm good with that. It's my favorite job. So, but no, I appreciate everyone being here. And I do recognize that we are in the lunch hour. So please feel free to eat lunch, do what you need to do to be comfortable. But my plan here is to, have a free-flowing conversation after I get out the boring stuff. But again, my name is DeMarcus Andrews. I'm the Director of Outreach and North Carolina Policy Manager at the Center for Responsible Lending. And you may hear me refer to Center for Responsible Lending throughout this conversation at CRL. So just so you all are kind of aware. I'm also the chair of the steering committee for the North Carolina Coalition for Responsible Lending. And for folks who may not be as familiar with CRL, our mission is to work to ensure a fair and inclusive marketplace that creates opportunities for all creditworthy borrowers. But I'll spend some time today briefly discussing kind of the primary issues that CRL engages in. And as I mention these issues, I'll drop some links into the chat if you are wanting to take a deeper dive into these issues. And don't worry about trying to collect them all. We will capture them in the notes for today in case kind of folks want to come back to this later. So getting into our primary issues at CRL, one being debt collection. And our focus here is to eliminate abusive debt collection practices. So for example, Oprah Thune, who is a non-bank lender that is based out of California that is currently lending in North Carolina. They have a primary base of Latino borrowers. And they've also have been employing a suing to intimidate scheme in order to collect on their debts. And this is particularly concerning when this scheme is directed at Latino borrowers, because many of them are low to moderate income levels. Some are also immigrants who have yet to complete their citizenship. And so this forces, some, Latino borrowers to make really tough decisions, like paying off Oprah Thune loans instead of paying their utility bills or rent. And I'll drop a quick link into the chat if folks want to kind of take a deeper dive into Oprah Thune, which is, and I may have, because it's not actually showing up as a link. Let me see, because I may just send them over to Merrill and have them as a follow-up. Okay, that sounds good. But another issue we focus on here is mortgage lending. Specifically, we champion and advocate for policies and initiatives that increase homeownership among Black and Brown communities. Another primary focus of ours at CRL is wealth building. And as we know, homeownership is closely tied to wealth in this country. And so it's definitely one of the focus areas at CRL. Overdraft is another issue that we focus on. We advocate for protections against unfair and abusive overdraft fees. And these overdraft fees are very consuming for communities that are struggling already to stay afloat, especially during uncertain economic times that we're in currently. And I would say over the past year or so, a lot of the bigger banks have eliminated their overdraft fees, which is one thing that we love to see. Another issue of ours, which is it's one of our core issues at CRL, is student loans. And I'm certain you all have heard, a lot of information kind of about student debt in the news lately. It's a lot going on, a lot of different moving pieces, especially as it relates to servicing. But for years, CRL has been very involved in the effort to cancel a portion of student debt. Our research illustrated that across the country, and specifically in North Carolina, that students and their families were taking on more debt to pay for higher education. And our research also illustrated that communities of color are disproportionately burdened by the student debt. And we know borrowers are foregoing starting small businesses, starting families, and even the massive debt load has caused borrowers not to qualify for a mortgage loan because of their income to debt ratio. And so this is especially concerning, so like I mentioned before, how closely tied homeownership is to wealth in this country. And so this is one of our core issues because we know that it's limiting mobility for a lot of borrowers in this country. The North Carolina Coalition has also been working intimately on the student debt for years from a slightly different purview. So even as the cost of education sitting more heavily on students and families, the companies that are tasked with collecting payments, called servicers, have repeatedly demonstrated that they could not or would not actually provide accurate advice to borrowers. And I can actually attest to this as a person with many student loans. I remember starting out in repayment and just not having as much information as I could have about payment repass or payment path. And just remember leaning on the services a lot for their information around how I could better get on track with my payments, and just remember being pushed into paths that exacerbated my debt load. And so as a result kind of this just realization, we've been pushing our state student loan bill that requires servicers to be licensed in North Carolina, which basically means on an annual basis, they will have to open their books to be reviewed by the North Carolina Commission of Banks for behaviors that exacerbate the debt loads of borrowers. So things like misapplied payments, which may result in the borrower becoming delinquent on their loans. And we also know about the kind of the snowball effect when it comes to folks' credit being impacted. And even placing a borrower in deferment or forbearance, which was my experience, in which this added more interest onto my loans. And so yeah, this is a core issue of CRL, and as well as the North Carolina Coalition. We'll also be pushing kind of this bill again in a long session in 2023. And I'll share some information closer to the end around where you can kind of plug into this to this work. Another primary focus area at CRL is payday and small dollar loans. So we work specifically. We don't work specifically on payday loans in North Carolina because it's been outlawed for like over a decade now. And it's just a fun fact. The coalition that I currently lead was led by my predecessor, Susan Lupton, and a host of other coalition groups around North Carolina are actually one of the leaders within the state at the time that were kind of pushing out payday lenders. And so it was actually kind of nice to be connected to that kind of historical moment in a small way. But we do a lot of work on small dollar loans. We keep tabs on these new kind of financial tech companies who are creating products that seem to resemble a lot of payday products. So, creating this cycle of debt. And so products like buy now, pay later, or early wage access. And you all may be familiar with these two. So early wage access is basically a product that offers workers access to their wages before payday, usually for a fee. And while low wage workers can benefit from these type of programs that are properly designed and regulated, some instead are harmed when these products are allowed into our marketplace without any guardrails to keep their use and cost kind of within a reasonable bounds. And so it's definitely a serious issue for us in keeping folks, out of these products that are seemingly looking like a lot like payday. Another issue is buy now, pay later. That may be familiar to some of us, which I know for me, it's very similar in my mind to layaway in a way. However, layaway is seemingly a form of savings, and the buy now, pay later is more identified as a credit, And unlike layaway, you have buy now, pay later. The consumer can immediately take the item they wish to purchase home. And these providers are becoming kind of pervasive, and many retailers provide this option as a payment, beyond kind of traditional retailers. And you find that this option is more attractive, definitely to younger folks, folks who are wanting kind of a quicker kind of finance option, and folks who conduct their shopping in store and online. So you also have providers, buy now, pay later providers. They do not view themselves as falling within the requirements of our federal and state credit laws, which is a huge concern of ours, because we didn't create these laws for nothing. We did create them to protect, you know, our borrowers within our state. And so these agreements do not exist solely between the retailer and consumer as layaway did, but they also involve a third party buy now, pay later provider. And many of these providers are like, you know, those, you know, fast growing financial tech companies that I mentioned before. And so our concerns exist with responsible underwriting of these, you know, these products, ability to repay, and folks being transparent about the fee, and also debt collection. And like I said, I'll share some, because I know I kind of quickly moved through that. I'll share some links that folks can kind of dig deeper into kind of some of our concerns around these. But we are definitely keeping our eye kind of on these new kind of fintech companies, because like I mentioned before, they're seemingly providing a benefit, but we recognize the cycle of debt these products can kind of inflict on borrowers. But lastly, we work on a host of other kind of issues, like I mentioned, that are relevant to credit and debt, so consumer finance issues, as well as small business. And I'll also share some links for us, you know, for you all to kind of dig deeper into this. But as I mentioned before, I am the chair of the North Carolina Coalition for Responsible Lending, which is an extension of CRL. And this coalition keeps community informed about our current threats and opportunities. And we use a variety of advocacy tools to achieve kind of high impact reform that builds and protects wealth for marginalized communities. And so basically the same kind of alignment with mission as the organization. And I'll share a link to our microsite that we're really proud of. But it kind of illustrates the breadth of the work the coalition has done over the last decade or so. The coalition has, you know, definitely some deep roots in North Carolina. But you can also, you know, sign up to become a member of the coalition, which is basically signing up to get updates kind of on lending policy at the state and federal levels, calls to action to support or oppose particular policies, and invitations to webinars like these, meetings, lobby days, and other events that are kind of related to affordable credit and debt. But with all of that being said, I just wanted to take some time to just, you know, get you all kind of updated on kind of the issue areas and the primary focus of CRL and the coalition. But I also wanted to hear from you all about, you know, any credit or debt issues that, you know, that are coming up from you all. And as well as I know me and Merrill are preparing for a possibly in-person meeting, and would love if you all are interested in hearing more about certain issues. We'd love to, you know, maybe bring in some experts that could talk through details of some of these issues that we work on. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you all. And I know probably a good place to start would be, you know, talking through the student debt forgiveness, you know, the recent announcement, you know, with folks being, you know, given 10K or forgiven 10K or 20K, depending on whether they receive Pell Grants or not. But yeah, how are folks feeling about the debt cancellation? Like, is it enough? Is it too much? Yeah, what are folks feeling?
If folks feel comfortable, thank you so much, DeMarcus. If folks feel comfortable, you can just come right off of your mic and share, or if you want to raise your hand, we can recognize you. If you want to put something in the chat, you can. I do think there has been a lot of energy, DeMarcus, about the federal loan forgiveness. I know people are getting letters about the public service loan forgiveness. Those are showing up. So I know those are things that I've talked to folks about. So the floor is open for questions.
Hello, my name is Katrina White, and I had a quick question, DeMarcus, and thank you for your presentation.
Absolutely.
I'm just confused about all these letters that I'm getting about student loan forgiveness and, you know, public work. And is it legit? Is it legit, or is it something that's going to be at the end of the day? You're going through all this trouble trying to get all this information. Of course, it would be worth it if it pans out for you, but at the end of the day, is this something that potentially will be shut down by Congress, or everything is just so political right now. You don't know if it's a gift or a gamut.
Yeah.
And in the sake of not wasting my time, or spreading, wrong information. Would you, recommend someone to continue just to pursue it?
So, I wouldn't give any advice on, what folks should kind of do, but I will say the forgiveness is happening. And folks, and I know I've heard from our student loan kind of team that the application process will come out here kind of later this month. And the process for applying, it's supposed to be easy. Because from what I hear, let's see if I can bring up my notes on this. There's no need to fill out any FSA ID to fill it out. The application will be in English and Spanish. It can be done on the desktop or a mobile phone, but they'll ask simple questions around name, social security, birthday, phone number, email address, and just attesting to your income and signature. And then folks will submit that, and then they'll start the process in working with your servicer in order to get you the forgiveness. But there's an extra layer to kind of that in North Carolina. So folks will also be on the hook for a tax bill. So the North Carolina Department of Revenue will consider this debt forgiveness as income for the year for borrowers in North Carolina. And so folks will have to pay a personal tax of, I think right now it's currently at I think it's $4.99. I think it's 4.99 right now. So which if an individual applies for the 10K forgiveness, they'll have to pay close to $500. And as well, if you move into the 20K, folks will have to pay nearly $1,000 in order to get that forgiveness. And so you'll find that families will make some really intentional decisions on on whether this is a good route for them.
Yeah.
But I will say, I know there's been a lot of communication, which is one of our concerns around kind of so many things happening at one time and us needing to really push our servicer bill within the state next year, is because you have the waiver, which folks who are applying for PSLF can, use this one time, the deadline ends in October 31st, where folks can apply for the public service loan forgiveness waiver. So you have that happening. You have payments re-entering in the start of the year in January. And then you also have this huge process in student, debt forgiveness that'll be happening on scale. And so it's really important that these, we have our servicer bills in place to be able to, make sure that these services are held to a standard for borrowers who are definitely going to need it at a time where there's just a massive amount of information, but also a moment in time where folks can really get some relief. But yes, to answer your question, yes, it's really happening. And I know that was long-winded, but I just feel like there's so many layers to it.
That was good information. And just one more quick question. If you're a parent of someone that has a student loan, and of course, your information is tied to this student, this child, are you eligible for
Yes,
forgiveness?
you are.
Oh,
And that's one of the beautiful things I think about this, is because many times a lot of the resources for borrowers aren't really for Parent Plus loans. And so I won, and my family was one that was really appreciative that this is something that was going to be, accessible to parents who've done a lot of co-signing for loans for their kids.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, I think that's an interesting point that, around the tax that folks will have to incur. Like, how do folks feel about that? Because I know I know for me, in thinking about, my kind of network of folks growing up, I know we depended a lot on our income tax. And so that money goes a long way. And so, folks having to, give up some of it, I think it will cause folks to have to make some really tough decisions. So, but I'd love to hear how folks are feeling about it. And there's a few other states that are actually taxing the forgiveness, but there's also states who tried to get ahead of this and create policies in which that protects this forgiveness from actually being taxed. But yeah, we'd love to hear what folks feel about that.
So DeMarcus, the tax is just state level, so it's it'll be state income tax. So
yep, the state income tax. Yep.
Gotcha.
And I appreciate that clarity. Yep. But yeah, and I know like folks may not have, because I know this may be new information for folks, and so folks may not have any, kind of immediate, reactions. But I'll share more links with Merrill that'll be kind of resources for folks to kind of learn more about, the debt forgiveness, kind of the changes that is happening to the income-driven repayment plans, as well as PSLF. So you all can, kind of take a deeper dive into it. And of course, if folks want to know more about it, this can definitely be something we put on an agenda for an in-person meeting where we can have because I'm not an expert on this issue, but we do have internal experts that could come in and possibly give a small presentation and be able to answer some questions that you all have.
I'm launching a really quick poll to see if folks have responsibility for student debt. I'm just curious, folks who are joining us. I'll leave it up for a little bit.
But yeah, another thing that I love to hear from you all, like, are you all like, what is your experience with kind of installment loans? And this is basically an installment loan is a type of agreement or contract involving a loan that is repaid over time with a set number of scheduled payments. And just wanting to know kind of what you all are maybe hearing about it, because I know I mentioned before Oportun, like, have folks heard of Oportun? What are folks' feelings around kind of installment loans? Oh, Joyce, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I would just like to comment on the having to pay taxes on the forgiveness. Well, we don't fall into that situation, but I would rather pay a small amount of tax that I could spread out over a period of time and have that $10,000 worth of debt forgiven.
So more of like a having like set up like a payment plan for folks.
Right,
to
installment plan, yes.
I think that's a great idea because it's, I mean, folks coming up with $500 or $1,000 right off that seems a little daunting, especially in a time of so much economic turmoil and folks in this huge, kind of space of need. And obviously these are folks, because if you are, folks who receive 20K forgiveness, receive Pell Grants, and these are obviously folks who are coming from families with lower incomes. And so just to say, like, come up with $500 to $1,000 in order to get this forgiveness, it seems a bit daunting. And so it's the realization that I know folks are going to come to on, whether they do apply for it or not, especially if there's, no kind of installment kind of payment path for folks who may want to apply, but also can't put the bill to, right off back. I appreciate that comment, Joyce.
And I just wanted to say, I totally agree with Ms. Joyce. I didn't want to say it at first because like, oh, I don't know whether I should say this or not, but yeah, it's less worry for me if I have to pay just that, minimum for that maximum that I'm getting rid of. And I just had a question too, DeMarcus, about, so why, I don't understand why I understand why they're going to tax it. I mean, it's revenue, I get it. But when you are allowing, which is a great thing, individuals to go to community college for free. And, you have been paying in order to get this relief from your debt. You've been paying your college loan. You've been paying on it, responsibly and consistently. That's one of the criteria that you have to get. But when you're allowing certain individuals, and it's a benefit for them to receive education for free, why are you going to tax people that's been paying for the student loan for years? That's my only concern, but I'll pay it,
No, and I appreciate you mentioning that, Katrina, and for folks feel totally free to, in like a part of our ground rules is being willing to be messy and not having a full formed thought. A lot of this stuff is, it's not as out there. When I say out there, information is not as it's prevalent, and so no, I want to hear your concerns, but like Katrina, I'd say a lot of I've had a lot of questions about why, and that's something I do not know the answer to, because I recently I had mentioned that why would you tax someone knowingly that they have Pell Grants and knowing that you only qualify for Pell Grants and coming from a low income family. Like, why would you tax someone on a forgiveness? And I do not have the answer. But there's a lot of things in North Carolina that I do not have the answer for why. But I appreciate hearing your concern, because these are it's good for us to hear it, to be able to walk into some of the legislators' rooms and be able to illustrate that these are concerns that folks are having. Folks are concerned that they won't be able to pay and foot the tax liability bill, and also not be able to enjoy this this historical moment of forgiveness. So no, I appreciate that, Katrina. It's hard to figure out why we do a lot of things in North Carolina. Oh, go ahead.
Does somebody else have a question? Were you about to say something, Ms. Joyce?
Well, I was going to say that does this well, my daughter, she still has student loan, and I don't think she received a Pell Grant, but and I'm glad Meryl, you sent me this information, because I've learned a lot today. And but if it was me, I would go for the forgiveness and pay the tax. So that's what, and I've got a friend, she was talking about student loan forgiveness even before this came up. So now I have some information to take back to her today.
Yeah, and that's the goal. The goal is to equip people to be more informed about what this historical moment means. And there are many folks who will feel the same as you, Joyce, who feels like this is a moment in time where I can get most, if not all, of my loans forgiven. Because I think about my sister who attended North Carolina Central, who's I think now she has a balance of like a little over $8,000 in student debt. And this will wipe out her entire debt load. And so it's not even a thought for her on whether she's going to apply or not. So I do feel like there are many folks who is going to enjoy this historical moment of debt forgiveness. Because like I mentioned before, I mean, you have many younger borrowers who are foregoing buying homes, foregoing starting families, which I truly enjoy. There's not a day that I go back that I'm not grateful for the family that I've been able to build. And this is something I know many of my, my peers want to start. They want to buy homes. They want to, create, a wealth building source to be able to pass along to, to their families. And so this is why I think a lot of folks, will take this chance at this historical moment. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about student debt. I know it's a hot topic right now. I know for folks, as been mentioned on this call, it's just so much that is happening right now, which is for the good. I think a lot of people will get relief, whether it's from debt forgiveness, folks who are on track to pay off of their loans through public service loan forgiveness, who could get some additional payments, folks who were even in forbearance throughout a period of time will get qualifying payments. And this is a historical moment, I'd say, for, public service loan, forgiveness, borrowers who are on that track to be able to, apply, for this waiver and get, some additional payments, which sometimes can knock off years of working in, not just working in public service, but it can knock off years of your debt and be able to allow, because some people intentionally choose to go into public service to be able to get their loans forgiven. And with the hopes that at some point they're able to transition out of the, public sector and be able to, go into a private sector and be able to build wealth. Because many start to feel that, there's that gap here with wealth building, folks who don't have as much debt. And so they can enter right into the private space as they move out of, their education, where others who, amassed a, amount of debt, usually from Black and Brown borrowers, because they have less family wealth to start out with. And so you see this, over and over again. So, but yeah, I do agree that, I think many folks will kind of take this historical moment and get some relief.
And that public service waiver is coming up pretty soon, right? It's pretty like a tight deadline. Is it like?
Yeah. So the deadline is October 31st.
Mm-hmm.
So later this month. And so I say, definitely get on it. I actually I kind of feel bad, but because I work on this issue and it's a focus of ours, but I just submitted mine by mail yesterday. But definitely do it. I'd say the application, it's definitely easy to kind of navigate. So definitely, and if there's any assistance folks need, I know we will have a team at CRL that'll be kind of helping guide folks and creating kind of job aids to help kind of guide folks throughout that process. So definitely look forward to sharing that as well. But yeah, the deadline's coming up soon.
So yeah, so you'll be able to share a link and then we can share with folks that reach out.
Yep.
That you got to have a team to help people. Okay.
Yep.
I definitely will be reaching out to Marcus. And another thing too, I remember applying for this public service loan forgiveness about 10 years ago. And I found out just from a colleague of mine who actually found out from somebody else. She applied for it and she was granted it. And I wasn't. And I don't, it was a long, time ago. So I can't remember the reason why, but that's one of the reasons why I feel like, is this legit? What are the things, because I had it, all of my boxes were checked and everything. And I just made sure I had, the correct information and everything. And actually, my husband told me maybe I was celebrating it before I actually got the official word. But yeah, I don't understand how it works for some, but not really for others.
Well, I'd say that it is definitely not on you. This process has been horrid, to say the least.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number, but I know there's been millions of borrowers who have applied for public service loan forgiveness, and only around 2% have actually been granting it.
Oh, wow.
And so, and it's, you're talking about small things that could knock you out of qualification. So let's say if I 1 month wanted to submit 2 payments instead of my 1 that I'm supposed to submit every month, that knocks me out of qualifying for public service loan forgiveness.
Oh, wow.
And so, and I'd say that you should definitely, use this time to apply for that waiver. Because I think this is a critical time that the government is trying to recognize that there was a lot of things that was done wrong.
Yeah.
And this is a moment of time where they're trying to correct it. So yes, I totally agree on how these experiences kind of set the standard on how you deal with these student loans. It was how I started dealing, because I lacked the understanding of what I had gotten myself into years ago. And have been doing so much work, on the back end, just trying to better understand what I've got myself into, and, deal with the realities, but also recognizing that, the government has taken at least some responsibility of what has happened and is trying to rectify it in a small way.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
DeMarcus, I wanted to lift up, you had mentioned, the reason that we're together and working with CRL is to have people ask these questions about the things you guys have been working on, the student debt, the payday. We had some folks in other convenings talking about property,
Yes.
heirs property and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and this may be a question for you and then folks here on the call. We also have concerns for people who are in 11th grade right now, or parents of 11th graders who are getting ready to start working on, their FAFSA for a student debt, or, trying to get funding to go to school as they're thinking about their plans. Seniors in high school, like, what does this time mean for them? And maybe someone who just started college and, maybe didn't get any guidance on kind of how to navigate financial aid. I'm curious if that's a topic that you guys would, have some expertise and conversation on how this impacts people who are entering to the space, or things they need to know. And I'm curious if the folks on this call, like, if that's something that folks would want to have a convening about, because we really would be interested in trying to have something before the end of the year where we can bring people together, maybe have a meal, and just, talk about some of the things. So I'm throwing it out there. So any reactions from you or DeMarcus or anybody here on the call about how does this impact people who are entering to debt now?
No, I think that's a great question. And for me, I know that we definitely have some partners that could come in, put on a presentation and give some advice. We are very connected with, so a part of our structure is that we're the subsidiary of Self-Help. And so we have a lot of connections to financial coaches who have actually embarked on kind of this new kind of space in student loans, and being able to help kind of guide folks throughout that process. But I think it's important that we definitely consider folks that are entering into student loans, trying to better understand, because that's where I think we can make a lot of headway on folks, understanding what unsubsidized and subsidized loans are. For me, it would have been great to, know that I could pay for school, without using loans, that there were some grants and scholarship opportunities out there for me. And so it was working with a lot of like guidance counselors. And so no, I'd love to hear from folks if that's something you'd be interested in. There's other issues, like I know Well, we can stick there, for a minute, but yeah, I know there's other issues that folks may have, may want some more information on. But yeah, I'd love to hear from folks if that's something you'd like to hear from or hear about.
I'm curious, even if it's in the chat, if folks that are on the call, is that something folks be interested in? I'm not gonna put you on the spot, Ann, but Ann, who's on the call, she might be multitasking or listening in. But we were having this conversation about there is a lack of like information sharing just in general about how to fund post-secondary, whether it's for like, certifications or associates or any other type of funding that you're looking for. It's just like a lack of information sharing. So how to get access and then how to be smart about it. So I know that that's been the topic.
Yeah.
Yep. And she agrees. She said that's a great information the college advisors can share. So
yeah.
But so and anybody else on the call, are there topics that we could dive into in our partnership with CRL that would be helpful to folks, and we'll provide it if we can.
Yeah, I know another issue, Meryl, you just mentioned that I definitely wanted to see, what folks are, what folks are hearing, if this is something you want to learn more about, because or heirs property, because that's something that we can definitely connect you with some experts on. And for folks, I'll try my best to give kind of a brief kind of understanding of what kind of heirs property is. And I know Meryl and my colleague Rochelle is on the call too. And so if I get any of this wrong, please feel free to correct me. But heirs property is basically property that is passed down to family members by inheritance, usually without a will or without an estate planning strategy. And so typically it's created when land is passed from someone who dies, so meaning without a will, to their spouse, children, or others who may be legally entitled to the property. However, even if a person who died had a will, they may still create heirs property by leaving property to multiple heirs. So in both instances, the heirs kind of own the property as tenants in common, which means they each own an interest in the undivided land. So in other words, rather than each heir kind of owning their own individual lot, they all own the whole property. And so unless the heirs go to like an appropriate administrative agency or court in the locality and have that title or deed kind of transferred, from the person who died, the property still remains in their name. And for heirs, owning property as tenants in common without kind of clear kind of title leads to many problems. And you find that, like I mentioned before, that home ownership is kind of one of these, maybe in some families, the singular source of wealth. And so this could keep, families from passing down, wealth to their families. And which in Black, families, it's definitely something that's, really a poignant issue. And so if folks want to, learn more, because I'm definitely not an expert on it, but we are definitely connected with a number of experts that could come in and talk. And I think even ones that has, ties to the eastern part of our state. So we can definitely, organize something like that. If folks are interested.
Yes, I would be, because I have a niece and a nephew. They're in that category. The mother left the property to them as tenants in common. But, there's some issues, so I think they could benefit. I don't know if they would join, but I could share some information. But I think that's a great topic.
Yeah. Okay.
Because there is a lot of aired property, and I think our people are losing their aired property faster than any other group of people.
Mm-hmm. No, I appreciate that, Joyce. And I'd love to try to set something up, especially in person. I'd love to get to know folks a little more. And like I was telling Meryl before the call, I've been, yearning for some interaction amongst adults. I've spent a lot of time with, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, which is fun. Love it. but it's also like, I need to talk to some adults. So I'd love to get in person and organize, something around this issue. I think it's the more and more I learned about it, the more and more important it became to talk about it, because it's definitely a serious issue that are impacting Black communities. And so, and with, like I mentioned, this being like a singular source of kind of wealth, for some families, I think it's truly important that we protect that.
Just highlighting in the chat, DeMarcus said, Ann Willis is fortifying like that interest in like having discussions about anything related to higher education financing, funding options other than loans, loan forgiveness programs. All those things would be welcome topics in a in-person convening or deeper dive. And obviously you'll share some links and stuff with us, and we'll get that out to everyone who joined the call, and then folks who registered but weren't able to show up. And then anybody who's watching this on the rebroadcast, if you want to put your email as a comment, somebody from NC100 will get this information to you as well and put you on our invite list for whenever that day is. So maybe sometime in November, possibly.
No, that sounds good, Marilyn. I know, so I intended for this to be around an hour. So we have around about 8 minutes. I'd love to just, hear from folks, if anything else is coming up, as issues related to credit or debt, or I can also give you 8 minutes back. That's always a good thing for folks. So, I'm definitely going where the crowd needs me to go.
Let me ask you a question real quick as people are thinking, and definitely anybody who would like to share something before we get out of here. The information that does come down for the loan forgiveness, especially the new stuff, will they typically communicate with people through letters or telephone calls? Because I know we get reports that people get calls and it'll be, hey, I'm such and such from the blah, 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 and Biden's plan, blah, 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 please call this number to get more information. So is it typical and legit, or will people get stuff via mail?
That is a good question. I think a lot of people will do I think they will try to do their kind of full range of communication. And so I imagine folks can expect emails, folks can expect calls. I know for me, Mohila, which is my new servicer, because there was this period of time where they transferred a massive amount of loans that were like currently housed up under Fed loan servicing to Mohila. And so they were doing calls. You had FSA, which is the federal kind of student kind of aid group that were, contacting me as well. And I know they're also tweeting now, so they're on social media. So right now, and I can share that link with you too, because someone actually shared it with me yesterday, that the White House is actually gone through and kind of has like kind of a number of different kind of slides that are kind of keeping people in the know about what's to come when it comes to forgiveness, kind of a timeline. And I think there's a link that you can sign up for updates on this. So as things start to be released, you can sign up to be updated as things come in.
I text a friend while I just text a friend, a sister at church, and asked her if she'd heard about the loan forgiveness program. And she said no more than telemarketing called it, and I felt they were a scam.
Yeah, and that's a fear, of ours, because there's been such a mass amount of information, which, it can be good and bad, that, you feel that more folks are being informed, but you also have this, like I said, experiences that folks have had with servicers, with them being, or whether it's, with just this lack of understanding, which, many of us have, that it's just, it makes us feel like, like anything that is good that comes, it's sketchy. But yeah, I think one of the things that we've tasked ourselves with is having more presentations on this, having experts in the room that can talk through what this process is going to look like. Because our student loan team is doing really, really good work at the federal level, working in states, and trying to make sure that folks are abreast to kind of this new information, because it's a lot. And yeah, there's a lot of hesitancy around whether this is real or not. So, it's yeah, that's the reality.
100%. And thank you, Taylor. Taylor put together some notes from today's call, and we'll share that again for folks who joined today. And well, folks that can grab it off the chat, you can grab it. Folks that are watching this later will be able to have some updates and notes in our on our website and through our email list. And then it looks like Ann was sharing the Conservation Fund, Resourceful Communities, based in the Triangle, part of the Conservation Fund. They have a Resourceful Communities group. They have a Researching Your Family Land and Legacy program about heirs property later this month. So there's a link in here that folks can grab, and then we'll share it on our website and all those places too. So thanks, Ann. And then, and Rochelle asked, is anyone hearing issues with debt collection? I'm very interested in that as far as like medical debt, you know, and like maybe work you guys are doing. But if there's anything that folks are hearing here in your communities about debt collection. And guys, for you guys are watching and folks are on the call. If you think of something that you wanted to ask or just didn't get a chance to formulate, please, I'll put the email, our info@nc100 address, and folks can shoot us notes too. And we'll share DeMarcus's and Rochelle's information for CRL as well.
Yeah, appreciate that, Meryl.
Medical debt, installment loan debt, rent-to-own debt collection. Okay.
Yeah, well, that is all I had, folks. I appreciate you all, your time and engagement in our conversation. This is super helpful for us. Meryl, I really appreciate you pulling this together and hosting us for today. I think this is really great momentum, going into a future in-person meeting maybe later this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I look forward to hearing more about, maybe some issues we'd like to tackle there, folks who, we'd like to hear from, specific experts. But yeah, I really look forward to the in-person, especially meeting some of you all in person.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, DeMarcus. And like I said, we'll be looking forward to kind of getting together with you and having folks ask questions, and we'll just, have some info sessions. So want to thank everybody for being here and sharing some of your lunch hour, and folks that are watching on replay. You always can get information from us and go to our website at www.nc-100.org. And this broadcast will be replaying on Facebook. Yep. Our Facebook channel is NC100. You guys feel entitled to share it with as many folks as possible and invite to the conversation. Oh, thank you, Kelia. Thanks, Ann. You guys have a great day.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. All right, bye everyone.
All right. Thanks.